I'm Richard Porter.
I'm Johnny Smith.
And this is On the Other Side of Things, the Smith and Sniff spin-off in which we answer your questions. Yes, more of your questions answered on a Friday morning, starting with
letters from the listeners. Letters from
a listener called Andy S, who says, I heard you talking on the podcast about county cricketers, and it gave me an idea on the same lines, county motorsport. If this existed, who would you have to represent your home county, and what would be your home ground? CMTMB, Andy.
Hi, Andy S. Are you like Z-Tech S?
Yes.
So better than the normal Andys.
Slightly sportier Andy, but not too much. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Not uninsurable, but it's okay. So county motorsport.
Yeah, so when he says represent your home county, I assume it means like a racing driver who's from your home county.
The area. Now this, so
you're from Somerset?
Yes. So I actually think that the actual motorsport itself would probably have to be trialling.
Oh.
Because it seems to be synonymous with the West Country these days.
But I assume all of the counties have to do the same thing. Maybe it could be multidiscipline, because the thing is, if it's like county cricket,
yes,
they're all playing cricket.
Of course. That's what happens.
You know, if Middlesex Cricket Club went, actually, we play football now, and just fetched up at Edgbaston, started hoofing a football around, I think that the MCC or whoever they are would...
Someone would shout, that's not cricket.
Oh, come on. That's simply not cricket. You go, yeah, we know. It's not. It's football. That's what we do now.
Yes.
But it'd be quite good if they were sort of standing at the bowling end and they just absolutely punted a football towards the batsman. We're doing this now. This is what we do. We've decided. So I guess it's... But I like... So maybe it's multidiscipline. You could do trials. You could do a bit of track work. You could do rallying. You could do... autocross, hill climb.
rallycross. I know what would be quite fun. Is it auto? What's the one where you have to do sort of like really tight little skid turns and things around cones? Is it autocross?
Also asphyxiation.
No. No, what?
Whatever it is. No, it's autocross. Auto test.
Auto testing. So it's one of the age-old sports that you can do pretty much anywhere with some cones.
Yeah, and it's always someone in a Mini with most of the body cut off.
Yes.
And a knob on the wheel doing some incredibly spinny steering work.
Yeah, that's right. So I would like to do that, but everyone has to do it in a very long wheelbase saloon car.
Right.
So...
Okay. I think you've overshot the question though, because you've got an absolute doozy here though for who's the racing driver who's going to represent your home county. You've got Jenson Button.
Oh yeah, of course, he's Somerset spec. Yes. Oh wow. Oh, we've won.
Well, hang on. Now I'm not sure. When this question came in, I did a quick search. Now, Ollie Webb is a racing driver of some repute, definitely lives in Cheshire, although apparently he's from Manchester, but, you know, potato. I think we can claim him, and he lives in Knutsford now, which is definitely in Cheshire.
Yes.
So he's quite handy.
He is.
But no disrespect to him, he's not quite Jenson Button, world champion Formula One driver.
Well, Button hasn't lived in Somerset for probably a very long time.
No, but he is definitely from there, isn't he? So you can claim him, that's okay.
Yeah.
I think I might have the upper hand on a home ground in that if it has to be a racetrack, I'm from Cheshire and we've got Alton Park.
Of course you have.
Good track.
Yeah, it's great.
So is this why you want to do trialling as one of the disciplines? Because Somerset would lend itself towards... Haven't you got hill climbs and shit? Haven't you got...
That's a good point. Have we got a hill climber? This is when Somerset people will be shouting at me for not knowing, but I've not lived there in a really long time.
Well,
I don't know. We got Smeathorpe, which is a disused airfield.
Which character in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, Smeathorpe's where I learnt to drive.
Is it?
Yeah, it was. Well, my dad thought it was mostly a disused airfield. It's just that when I was learning to drive, there were gliders coming towards me.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a they now use it for banger racing. Well, I have done for years. So I used to go and watch banger racing periodically when banger racing was actual bangers and not valuable cars that people had spent 2 months building. So yeah, I don't think there is an actual... Oh, hang on, where's Castle Combe?
Oh, that's Wiltshire.
Oh, it is Wiltshire, isn't it? Damn.
So it's close. So I was going to say, well, thanks for the question, Andy, but I think we can throw this open to the listeners. Who would claim that their home county has the winning combination of an excellent racing driver born in that county and an excellent track within that county, and would therefore somehow win this county motorsport league that we haven't thought through properly yet?
I think Jenson, but I'd like to see Jenson Button back out in a rallycross Beetle.
You've come out strong with Jenson Button as your captain of your county side, definitely.
I've still never met him, and I've got his email address, and he sometimes replies to me.
Have you?
Because I know Ant Anstey quite well, and obviously Ant and Jenson do the Radford thing together.
Yeah,
and they're best buds. But he's agreed for me to film an interview with him, but I'm trying to get into his garage, and he sort of won't let me.
Oh,
at the moment.
Okay.
So there we go. Yeah.
Have you? So you've had an email chat with him?
Yeah, several times.
Have you ever mentioned that time he turned up to do that kind of Iron Man thing, and then he'd accidentally bought a lady's wetsuit and had to retire because it was slicing him in half?
I actually have never mentioned that. No, and
I don't know whether maybe you shouldn't. I don't know how he feels about it now, but
I'm going to mention
that was a thing.
If we ever have a sit-down, heartfelt interview that will involve Somerset and Beetle chat, I might also bring in the sort of mangina-inducing bikini.
I mean, if he refuses for the interview to be sit down, you'll know that he's accidentally wearing the lady's wetsuit again. So I won't sit down, Johnny. I can't.
Can I do this interview stood up? Thank you. On tiptoes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, well, let's move on to another letter from Tim Brown. Hello, guys. Have either of you ever had to learn a driving skill due to a fault with a car? My first car was a 1983 Metro City deceased spec, Isle of Wight edition. I love that. Ooh. When my grandmother bequeathed it to me, what a great word. Yeah. After her 6 years of ownership, it had done a little over 4,000 miles due to her fear of losing her precious parking spot. And I doubt she ever dared to venture beyond 60 miles an hour. I love that. So she didn't drive it much in case she couldn't park it back where she wanted to park it. I mean, that's just an amazing problem to have invented. Needless to say, after a few months of 17-year-old me driving it, British Leyland build quality was tested, and one of the first things to throw in the towel was the synchromesh on second gear, meaning I had to learn the ancient and noble art of double declutching. Ooh. I never, ever bothered or couldn't afford to get it fixed, so I drove the next 40,000 miles over the next 18 months double declutching before I duly wrote it off. All the best. Tim. Well, what a lovely car.
I feel that's a cliffhanger, surely. Well, thanks, Tim, but I duly wrote it off. It's just a very casual end to a story. I feel like there's more there that he's holding back. It is, isn't it?
Well, I inherited my... when I was learning to drive, obviously I used to borrow Mum and Dad's Avenger, and that had two. So when I first passed my test, the starter motor used to fail 1 in 5 times, and it needed a bop with an axe handle. So my dad just used to keep the axe handle in the boot. I've told this story before. I got pulled over by the police because I was dicking around in McDonald's car park with some friends after college, and they searched the car and they took it away. Because it was classed as an offensive weapon, and Dad was cross because he said, "How am I going to start it 1 in 5 times now?"
Did he actually say that? Even through his rage, your dad was able to be quite specific about the nature of the problem. How am I going to be able to start the car 1 in 5 times?
No, so there was that, and then Dad had a Volvo T5, which reverse gear, it was an auto, and the reverse gear failed on it, so he drove it for about 3 months. It was a long time with no reverse gear.
Still, just how is that possible? Because also, don't your parents live on a cul-de-sac?
Yeah, they do.
So how?
I think he just put it on full lock and just understeered it round people's lawns at night.
I reckon a T5, you might be able to do one of those. You know, they teach them, don't they, police drivers and stuff? They teach that.
Like a reverse bootleg turn type thing.
Yeah, but they do that one where to get out of a tight spot, if someone's boxed you in when you're stationary,
Yes.
full lock, and then you just absolutely, like in a manual car, just absolutely drop the clutch, and you basically sort of boot your way out.
You hurt the drive shafts big time.
Yeah. Oh God, awful.
Don't you?
I realised a skill that I learned was, and I think I've mentioned this before, that when I was at university, my friend Welsh Mike, he was a mature student, so he had a car, which was an incredible novelty. No one.
He's the guy into Marillion, really into Marillion.
No, that was Marion, who was into Marillion.
Marion into Marillion, seriously?
Yeah, I told you this. Yeah, Marion was a Marillion fan. Very confusing. Mike had this Mini. It wasn't that old because he was a mature student and he'd had a proper job. So he'd earned actual money. And his two aunts lived in Llanelli in South Wales and worked at the local, what was the BL factory, Rover factory. I think they made radiators for Rover Group cars. And so they got a staff discount. And Mike had used his staff discount to buy a brand new old school Mini. But, when they were still in production, it was a, L reg maybe?
Yeah.
So 90...
93.
Yeah. And so it wasn't that old, but it had been broken into, and someone had slashed the wiring under the dash to get the alarm to shut up.
Oh.
And it never got put together properly after that. I think the wiring was sort of all taped back together in a really khaki way, and it used to short. And so the battery was forever going flat. I know we were talking in the last podcast about me making ham-fisted attempts to bump start my Panda.
Oh, gosh, here we go.
I actually used to be quite a good bump starter because Mike was forever calling out the AA to get his Mini started again because the battery was always going flat. To the point where I think it was the AA or the RAC said to him, "We can't keep coming out like this. You're abusing your membership."
Yeah.
And
just get the wiring sorted.
If there's a few of us around, and he lived in a student house, there were 5 of them in a student house, and I only lived around the corner. And I said to him, if there's people around, we could just bump start it. And he went, "Oh, right, yeah." So the next time you need to go somewhere in the car, I went, "Let's just push it. We'll just push it down the street, and then
choke out.
You can bump start it."
Ignition
so we
lights
pushed it
on.
down his street. Nothing. You can hear him trying to crank it. Nothing's going on. Stopped, and I went, "Have you got it in second, right? Not first?" And he went, "What?" And he hadn't actually got it in gear at all.
Oh, gosh.
And at that point, I realised that Mike didn't know how to bump start a car. So I was like, "Oh, come here, look, I'll do it." And I think I'd done it before with mates, at home, trying to get some wacky car going. So I sort of was like, I know how to do this. It's second, and the way we know how to do it. But the Mini, because it was on carbs, it started very lumpily, and you had to give it some throttle.
You did. You had to feather
Then
it.
you were approaching the end of Mike's street.
Yeah.
And you had to give it some brake. And so, this is a long-winded way of answering Tim's question. The skill I learnt from a fault with a car is rudimentary heel and towing.
Yes. Full choke heeling and towing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a good skill. It's a very, very good skill. Oh, there's also one, and I shouldn't say this because it's my Beetle.
Yes.
No one else can unlock the driver's door apart from me, and it doesn't have a barrel on the passenger side because that wasn't an option. The key only goes in the driver's door, and if you just put the key in and turn it like you would with a normal car, it simply won't pop up the door thing. There's a specific technique which can't even be described where you have to wiggle it in a certain way. And I can do it every time because I've had that car for years and years and years.
Yeah.
But somebody else can't. So my brother can't unlock it, my dad can't unlock it. Only I can unlock it, and I'm never going to change that about it.
No. Well, it makes it personal to you, doesn't it?
So there you go, Tim.
Ivan has asked. He says, "Hey guys. I'm sure I and many other listeners like yourselves would consider ourselves to be car pervs. I wondered, what is the most car nerd weirdo thing you have done?" The example he gives is that, do you remember the Golf R400 concept car? Just like a sort of 400 horsepower version of the Golf R.
Yes.
He even calls it the Golf of all Golfs, but it was a concept. And And as a 13, 14-year-old, when the concept was revealed, I was stunned, and a few months later, spy shots of what would have been the Golf R400 emerged. As the months passed, it was announced the project was cancelled and would not come to reality. I was pissed right off and quite sad. So for around a month, I DM'd VW directly on Instagram, begging them to build the car. What a stroker. Sending paragraphs via social media direct message to a manufacturer as a 13-year-old, begging them to build it.
I do remember. Was that car announced? Was it at the Worthersea show? I think it was.
Yeah.
At the Golf GTI Festival.
Yes.
I do remember it. It looked amazing.
It was a cool-looking thing. I could see why 13-year-olds even would be annoyed. But
as an angry, slightly strokery thing to do, but you're obviously passionate about the demise of the R400. What's his question?
What is the most car nerd weirdo thing you've ever done?
Oh, car nerd weirdo.
I don't know where to start. I mean,
no, where do we start?
When I was a kid, I used to write to car companies. Because
yeah, I did.
Because I wrote to Rover once and asked how to become a car designer, but I chose to incorporate into the letter a quite impassioned plea for them to be bought by Ford because I thought it would do them good.
Seriously?
Because I think it had been rumoured in Car Magazine that Ford was sniffing around Rover, and I think specifically they were quite interested in the K-Series engine, because it was quite high-tech and interesting at the time, and it hadn't been launched, but they were talking about tech buying and stuff. And I was like, no, you should be bought by Ford, because I could see that, it would make a lot of sense, and you could do this and that and that. But in reflection, they wrote back as well and went, don't... here's what people do in our design studio, so you don't have to be a designer as such. You can be an
That's
engineer,
amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, so that was.
I
nice.
wrote to Austin Rover as well. We're both such strange people, Rich.
I also rang Peugeot. They had like an information line, and I rang Peugeot once
to say,
and I wanted to know. I wanted to know why the Peugeot 405s that were sold in the UK, which were built in Coventry at that point, had the radio aerial on the rear wing, because Euro 405s, built in France, had the aerial on the roof.
They did. Oh my gosh, you were born to do this job, weren't you?
Well, I mean, that's just strange, isn't it? Because I would have been 11 or something at that time, got home from school and spent my evening not playing video games or watching cartoons on telly or something.
Yeah. Spent
it ringing Peugeot UK to ask them about radio aerial positioning on the Peugeot 405. So that's pretty strange. And we went on a family holiday to the Cotswolds once, just a half term, went and stayed on a farm kind of thing. And one day, while the rest of my family drove up to go to Warwick Castle, I think, I said, as a teenager, I don't want to come with you to Warwick Castle. Drop me at the Austin Rover Gaydon Proving Ground, and I will spend the day trying to be a spy photographer instead.
Oh, my gosh.
And amazingly, my parents went, OK, then.
Oh, bless them. That's brilliant.
I had my mountain bike, so I would have been, I reckon I was 13 or 14. No, maybe a bit older, maybe 15. I mean, really, mid-teens. And I had my mountain bike. I think I did, yeah.
Yeah, rucksack.
Rover Group Proving Ground by then, but anyway, it was the place where like Jag Land Rover are now.
A flask of drink.
Probably, although it was probably 1990 or 91 actually. So it would, I reckon, but no water. I wouldn't have thought to take a water bottle because you just sort of didn't in those days.
No,
and I had my mountain bike, and I had a camera in a rucksack along with some damp sandwiches and a flask of something. And I just went cycling around and cycling like across fields and stuff, trying to get close to the test track or the fence so I could take spy pictures. I didn't take a single photo that day because it turns out, they've thought of this.
You didn't take a single photo?
I don't think so. They don't provide any easy vantage points.
Also,
I think I had a camera. I had an SLR camera, but it didn't have a very good lens on it. Hans Lehmann, the spy photographer, has a sort of like 2 feet long lenses that look like the guns on the front of a warship, and I had a sort of standard lens that you take family snaps with. So it wasn't very good at spying. And then I got a puncture on my bike and I was stuck in the middle of a field.
Oh my god!
It was quite muddy, and I had to extricate myself. And it was starting to go dark. And of course, I didn't have mobile phones, so my parents had finished their day at Warwick Castle with my little brother, and gone back to the agreed meeting point where they dropped me off near Gaydon.
And you weren't there. I
wasn't there. And they were going insane with worry. And I didn't realise this. I was just thinking, wheeling my very muddy but non-rideable mountain bike down these lanes in the dark. And the first I knew of it was when a police car pulled up and went, "Are you Richard? Your mum and dad are very worried about you."
Oh, no!
So that's quite a car weirdo thing as well, isn't it? That I decided, no, Warwick Castle, I'm simply not interested in medieval history. I'm interested in the future of the Rover Group.
This is great. Well, I hope that... I mean, that's what an answer to a letter. There we go. A convoluted one. I'm going to read this one out from John Hammond, because this one I think is fun. Hi guys, after Johnny revealed in the last podcast that his brother remembers the registration plates of teachers' cars, a schoolmate and I used to regularly access teachers' cars. Assess, sorry, not access. A schoolmate and I used to regularly assess teachers' cars. He's not a thief. Yeah. Stand out for me included an English teacher called Mr. Lane, who had a blue Citroen CX-25 Estate, and a history teacher who had an oak green Mark II Golf GTI big bumper. What a player.
Yeah.
Nothing trumped, though, the geography teacher who had a borrowed TVR Chimera for me.
What?
Who had a borrowed TVR Chimera for me? Okay, I don't know who he borrowed it from. Head teachers let the side down, though, with Mr. Speed, a.k.a. Spud, piloting a blue Hyundai X2, and my primary school head teacher having a Lancia Y10, presumably not a turbo. My question is for you guys, do you remember any particular teacher for their automotive choices? Well, you definitely do, because I remember one of your stories about Rover P6 guy.
Mr. Hurst, yeah.
And I do remember a few. I remember my primary school teacher from when I first started primary, Mrs. Stevens, or Miss Stevens. She had a Datsun Violet.
Oh.
And it had those hubcaps which looked like Jamaican steel drums.
Yes.
And to
pythons, yeah.
And to this day, I remember the hubcaps. I don't even know why. And so she had that. And then Mrs. Munro, who was my next teacher, she had, at the time, a brand new VW Polo Mark II bread van. So that seems really modern. And then secondary school, my art teacher had a Volkswagen camper, an air-cooled bay window camper, which I think he painted it himself. And then his girlfriend, partner, was my textiles teacher, who was equally quite arty, of course, and she did all the upholstery in it. And they used to go away for weekends in it. Miss Das, who was really cool, actually. Miss Das was really cool. And Mr. Foster, the art teacher. And he used to let me sit in the art class at lunchtimes, and we used to do extra art and deluxe paint 3 on the Commodore Amiga that he had in the corner.
Oh.
How dated does that sound? So dated. So yeah, and then there was one other. Oh, there was a lady with my maths teacher. She had a Fiat 500, as in the old Fiat 500,
wow.
Which was ancient then. I mean, what was her name? She was like Carol Smiley. She constantly smiled, even though I was a bit of a thickie when it came to maths. And she had to explain things 17 times to me, but still smiled, bless her.
There was a teacher at my school that had, and I can't remember, she was one of the science teachers, but she never taught me, and I can't remember her name, had a Mark III Cortina. But what made it notable was it was black, but it had plainly been painted with a brush.
Oh.
You could see the brushstrokes. But I think a lot more of that sort of thing went on.
It did.
In the 80s, because that would have been at least a 10-year-old car then, probably more. So, it was probably fending off the rot, and they decided the best way to do it was It was sort of, maybe it was Hammerite or something, but the whole car was painted black, but you could see the brushstrokes.
It wasn't unusual for people to paint their own car.
No, I don't think it was.
It's actually quite fun.
Sort of didn't care about the fact you could see the brushstrokes. It was just that was the look. But I didn't. So yeah, Mr. Hurst with his Rover P6 collection, and then his out of left field all white Golf GTI Cabrio. He was the car guy at our school in the teaching staff, clearly, but quite a quiet car connoisseur as well. Mr. Fletcher, the music teacher, had an Alfa Giulietta.
Oh,
yeah.
Now we're talking.
And for some reason, I never understood the hierarchy of parking places at the teacher's car park. But for some reason, Mr. Fletcher didn't park his Alfa with all the other teachers. There was sort of like a single spot behind another building, and he used to always park it there. And I don't know, it's like he didn't want his Alfa getting dinged. If he'd had to sort of negotiate with everyone else, right, that's my spot, no one else take it. But he always parked a red Giulietta.
You've just reminded me, a lady who worked in the bursary who had completely painted on eyebrows that were blue. Her husband used to come and collect her every lunchtime in a brand new at the time. Was it a Peugeot 605? What was the 405 that was really exec?
Yeah, 605.
Was it a 605? Yeah. And I'd never seen one before. And it was white with sort of like, might have been like blue tram lines in the bumpers and stuff. It looked slick, I have to say.
Yeah.
And I thought,
they were very handsome cars.
Yeah, so she got picked up for that. And I do remember it must have had blue accents on it somewhere, because I used to kind of chuckle to myself, because she did have blue eyebrows that were painted on. She was a lovely lady, but she did have blue eyebrows.
Jasmine Grosso asks, is the Eagle Quest available for weddings? Well,
Jasmine,
we're working on that, Jasmine, but maybe so in the future. Yeah. We hope there will be an opportunity if you really want to rent the Eagle Quest. It's a work in progress. We'll let you know about that one.
It has been on our minds. So
another patron called Darren B. McClellan. There's a question for you specifically. He says, any recommendations for cleaning/polishing the windows and C-pillar trim on a 1983 Mercedes 240D? So that's a W123, isn't it, I guess?
Yes, it is, yeah.
I don't think it's chrome, and I've had poor luck trying to get it to shine.
I think it's stainless on them. A lot of the trim on 123s was stainless.
Oh.
And because it was really, really nice quality stuff. So
would some of that shiny sink stuff you can use to clean kitchen stainless items work?
Yeah, it would. The stuff that I've used for that, which is not abrasive, is called Barkeeper's Friend.
Oh,
and Barkeeper's Friend is just it looks like old school baking powder, and you dab it onto a cloth, and then you rub it gently on a damp surface that you maybe just lightly misted with water, and it brings it up nicely without being aggressive. And that's for kitchens. I think it's Barkeeper's Friend. It's kind of old school, traditional looking stuff. And then if it's not that, you might be able to use Otosot if you're very, very gentle. But nowadays there's metal polishes that you can use. But
that's interesting. It's stainless rather than chrome.
I think it's stainless. I think that Mercedes had loads of stainless on it, because I remember mine did. I mean, there were. If you've never worked on one, it's an absolute. It's a heaven sent activity to do any kind of routine maintenance on a W123. They're just so.
Really?
They're built by engineers for mechanics to go right. Ooh. You want to do? I mean, I remember at the time, you can do an oil change in a white suit. I maintain it's so easy to do. You can take the oil filter out without even crouching down. It's so convenient.
What?
It's wonderful. Oh, it's brilliant.
Really?
Yeah, oil filters right on the top of the engine under this sort of like dome cover. You need 113mm, and you can lift it out between finger and thumb. And honestly, you probably don't even need to wash your hands. It's so good. It's so nice to just do maintenance on. I miss those cars. Wow. Sweet. Sweet motor
Sweet
cars.
All right,
So there you
one
go,
last
Darren.
question. Paul Ronalden says, when are we going to see some Prelude 2.2 merch? Yeah. Soon, Paul. Very soon. We are, I've said this before, but promise it is really happening. We are doing new merch, and there's going to be a whole range of stuff, including at least one Prelude 2.2 T-shirt, mug, what have you. It's coming soon, I swear. Hopefully, even with our usual ineptitude, we will get some new T-shirts out before the summer is out.
We will. Believe. Yeah. Never
On that tantalising prospect, we wrap things up. Thank you for all your questions. We'll answer some more again in another Otosot next Friday. Regular show on Monday. See you then. Bye-bye.
Cheers, mate. Thanks, mate. Bye.
On the other side